For me, the form is the content. It's a very formalist way of making a movie, but it's the only way that I interpret images.
Benvenute amiche e amici di Cinefax, oggi vi presento un'intervista esclusiva con uno degli autori più interessanti e importanti del cinema contemporaneo, Brady Corbet, candidato all'Oscar per The Brutalist, Leone d'Argento alla regia all'ultima mostra del cinema di Venezia, un autore che ci ha conquistati sin da subito, anche con la sua simpatia, è un grande cinefilo, lo abbiamo incontrato al cinema Arlecchino di Milano e con lui abbiamo parlato della maestosità delle sue immagini, ma anche dell'importanza di tutto quello che si cela fuori dal quadro. Sentiamo un po' l'intervista.
Brady, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, pal.
I was a fan of yours even before you started your directing career because it's impressed in my mind your role in Mysterious Skin by Greg Araki.
Oh, yeah.
It was wonderful. And there was something already in that film that after knowing you as a director, there's like a thin line. You know, I just wanted to congratulate you on your artistic career as a whole.
Oh, thanks a lot.
And my first question is, with the success of the Brutalist, the discourse around it and the praise is mostly for these incredible images, this cinematic quality of it. But I think that in your movies, what is really great is what happens outside in the ellipses, with the outside of the frame.
Yeah.
So, what draws you to that kind of storytelling? And how do you balance to create some great images, cinematic quality, and this undertone and this like a feverish quality in the poses between images?
Yeah, I you're absolutely right. I think that's a very astute way of describing it, because what I've always said to especially cast members and stuff when they're reading the screenplay is that there's a narrative outside of the narrative. There's a picture outside of the picture. We are actually in the corridors of the narrative, and what is significant is usually happening next door. For me, the form is the content. There's no separation between the two. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of interpreting images. And I realized that it's not a way that all audiences or all filmmakers or all performers, it's not necessarily how they watch films, which I appreciate. But these conversations, they usually don't get very far, because for me, the form is sort of a self-evident truth. It can only go together one way. So when everyone is having conversations about, well, what if it could be this or what if it could be that? For me, it's not really true. I can only see it functioning in one way based on the rhythm of the scene, how much dialogue there is, what that dialogue is about. It's very clear for me where to place a camera based on the action. And I know that this, of course, is a way that David Fincher feels, or Alfred Hitchcock, or, it's a very formalist way of making a movie. And I don't necessarily think it's the only way to make a movie, or even the right way to make a movie, but it's the only way that I interpret images.
To add quality to this, what is extra the images, what is outside the images is music. And what really touched me at the end of The Brutalist was the dedication to in memory of Scott Walker.
Sure.
Which is a musician that I absolutely adore. And I think that it marries with your images, with your cinema so well. So I wanted to ask you how started this collaboration between you two, and now that he's gone, how much do you feel it will stay with your cinema after?
I wrote Scott a message and I never expected to hear back. I got his information through a friend of a friend that had worked with Scott on a documentary. I sent the screenplay for The Childhood of a Leader to his manager at the time. And first I went and I met his managers in London. To my surprise, he replied almost immediately. Like he was very, he was extremely shy in real life, but on email and in letters, he was actually quite jovial and enthusiastic. He was, I think, the first person involved with childhood. I mean, he came on just because of the screenplay, and then I slowly worked on casting the film, and it took a long time to get together, the financing and a schedule. And he was there all the time, so we developed a friendship, of course. And I'm very influenced by Scott's work. When people talk to me about cinematic influences, or who is it that I've worked with that really reshaped the way that I think about making films. It's actually fewer filmmakers and more film artisans. Like I worked with a production designer named Jean-Vincent Pouzos on The Childhood of a Leader, and he reshaped the way that I saw just even practically how to make a movie. Because when I was very young, I was very rigid. It was like, okay, well, but I imagined that the kitchen was on the left, not on the right. And that's just, it's not very functional. It's not a way to make a movie. You have to be very uncompromising about the right things, the sort of pillars of the project. And you have to be very nimble and very, very easygoing about many other details that are constantly changing and sort of changing the way that you envisioned it. But if you are compromising on the right things, then things are usually getting much bigger, much better, more interesting than whatever you initially imagined. So for me, I think that to bring it back to Scott Walker, the ambition of his work, the formalism, his historical interests were so aligned with mine. He showed me how to bring that ambition to life. Because before I met Scott, or before I met Jean-Vincent, or before I met many people that I now collaborate with, I didn't. I knew what I loved, but I didn't know how to bring it into realization.
Talking about the theme in your movies, one that particularly struck me is like a Faustian undercurrent that is particularly clear in the Vox Lux.
Sure.
And also in The Brutalist,
Sure.
in the relationship of Laszlo with his, the owner, if you will.
Sure.
And so what draws you to this kind of storytelling? And do you see a parallel with your struggle as a filmmaker with in relation with Hollywood and the studio system to make the struggle of making a film now?
Yeah, I think that for me, I love Goethe. I've always loved Goethe. It's a really important text for me. I love using a classical device, something that's existed for centuries, to investigate things that are very, very modern. The Brutalist is very much, it's very personal in many ways. All of the films are kind of personal in a way. Vox was a film that was about a young teenager, becoming popular in America. And that was something that I experienced when I was a teenager. I didn't experience it to the degree that character experiences it, but I certainly grew up with a lot of people that I saw have that kind of overnight success, and usually for the wrong reasons. And so, yes, I think that The Brutalist for me was a film that was something that my wife and I wrote to be sort of emotionally cathartic for ourselves and the viewer.
The one last question, because at Cinefax we have this way of saying to the listeners, do yourself a favor when we want to recommend some film that we feel that is underloved and needs to be rediscovered. If you have some film recommendation for our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, a real obsession of mine are the early films of Peter Weir. I mean, I've always loved Peter Weir, and I've always loved Nicholas Roeg, and I've always loved this period of 70s and early 80s cinema. But Peter Weir, I just think is such an extraordinary, visionary filmmaker. I mean, The Year of Living Dangerously is one of the most intoxicating films ever made for me. And The Last Wave, I think, is just, it's perfect. There are, of course, too many films to recommend, so we'll just focus on late 70s Australian cinema.
Yes, that's one of my favorites too. So thank you, Brady, for the interview. Thank you very much.
I appreciate
It was a real pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
E noi ringraziamo di nuovo Brady Corbet e la Cineteca di Milano che ci ha dato l'opportunità di condurre questa intervista. Recuperatevi i suoi film e noi invece ci vediamo su YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, che più ne ha più ne metta, con tutte le novità di cinefax.it. Da Marco McLovin Lovisato è tutto.